My name is Russ Vandenbroek, and in the capacity that we're here tonight, I'm the director of a new program at U of L on peace, justice, and conflict transformation. We have a wonderful evening. You're going to hear from a variety of speakers. Afterwards, there'll be a book signing of Dr. Harding has some of his books here in the lobby and a reception. We're going to do one thing slightly out of order, which is to start with two songs to help us get all in the mood. And I know that something is very near and dear to Dr. Harding's heart. So please join me in welcoming our singers, who are Cynthia Fletcher and Carol Kramer.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear us okay, or hear me okay? Yeah. Wonderful. So this is Cynthia, and this is Tyler. You can join in. He's got a model for you that we all get to join in on the songs tonight. Going to start with one called Ella's Song, written in honor of the amazing Ella Baker by Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan of Sweet Honey and Rock. And so, anyways, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. So please join us as you can, and we'll. Yeah.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom
another one for you, for our esteemed speaker joining us this evening. It's a song called Peace and Harmony that I wrote, I don't know, 20 years ago or so. And I guess that the thing about working and struggling for peace and justice is that we're always trying to strive for the same things and trying to be patient. Actually got to hear Dr. Harding not that long ago, and he talked about patience in the struggle. And I think patience in the struggle is what striving for peace and harmony is all about. So some of you might know this song, and if you do, please join in. I've been thinking about the world, about the struggle and pain, how we all need to make a change if we are to remain. When at last the earth can blossom forth, life and love of every youth, if we all try to get it down, skies can turn from gray to blue. Can you hear? We'll all be singing for joy in peace and harmony. Yes, peace and harmony. When the people aren't hungry, when the children aren't bruised, when our sisters and brothers, we love whomever we choose, when our people of color and me proud to live equal and free. And when the power of just a few turns into strength for us all. Can you hear?
pleasure to visit a class that Dr. Harding taught last night for my colleague Kate Fossil. And he started that actually with the very first song that we heard tonight. It created a sense of connectedness in the audience, much like I feel already. I'd now like to introduce another one of my colleagues, a very important colleague, my boss, our provost, Dr. Shirley Willingans.
So my notes from Russ say, do one of your warm and fuzzy welcomes. You know, I probably should have gone before the singers, because I have to admit, I'm so moved by that. I'm not sure how well I can speak. Because I remember in 1968, living in Detroit, and people rioting outside of our home, as people were so deeply tired of not being acknowledged as people, that there was nothing else to do but erupt into violence. And I remember in 1969, walking in marches so that we could end the Vietnam War. And the songs that you sang just brought back this rush. And looking around the room, some of you are as old as I am, and you do remember this, of this rush of thinking that what we did then would make a difference. And by the time I was this age, it would all be okay. And realizing that here we are again, where these songs are still being sung. And on the one hand, I feel deeply saddened by this. On the other hand, I feel extraordinarily hopeful, because here you all are, still here. And here is Tyler, lifting his voice to join in with everyone else. And it won't stop until it's done. And, you know, I know this week has been just really wonderful at the university, because so many extraordinary things are going on. And one of the very best parts of my job is that I get to spend 10 minutes at all of them. And we had Wes Moore here yesterday. And for those of you that don't know, Wes Moore wrote a book that's called The Other Wes Moore. And he tells a story of two young men growing up outside of Washington, D.C. They are both named Wes Moore. And one Wes Moore, the one who wrote the book, has a troubled youth. All those things that happen to young black men in inner cities happen to him. But at age 13, his mother decides that's enough and actually sends him to a military school. And he talks about how much he hated it, and yet people sort of formed around him to believe in him and not give up on him. And even when he was being his most hateful, in his words, people who just believed that he could be a wonderful man. And he tells about the other Wes Moore, who grew up with a very similar beginning, but didn't have all of those supports that let him make different choices. And as I think about this whole idea of peace and conflict transformation, it seems to me that Wes Moore's book ultimately talks about choices, and that in each moment we get to make a choice. And all of those choices actually can have an impact and change how things turn out. And for each of us, as we go through our day, if we want a peaceful world, to take that moment and say, is what I'm putting in going to bring us closer to peace? Is what I'm feeling in my heart going to bring us closer to love? And for each of us, even if we still live in a world where we still need those songs, and we still need to march, and we know we're not there, at least for ourselves, we can realize that what we are putting into this in every moment is another step toward peace. So thank you so much to Russ and all of you who've worked on bringing this great program to the university. Thank you for all of you who still have hope and still believe, and thank you for the lovely music. It's now my honor to introduce someone who can speak about all of these things much more eloquently than I am. And I introduced myself just before I came down here because I said, I'm about to introduce you, so I should maybe at least shake your hand. So we have a treat tonight because Dr. Vincent Harding is a native of New York City. He holds an MA and a PhD in history from the University of Chicago. From 1961 to 64, he and his late wife, Rosemarie Feeney Harding, worked in various capacities as full-time teachers, activists, negotiators in the Southern Freedom Movement. They were friends and co-workers of Martin Luther King Jr. and many other names that you would recognize. In 1968, after several years as chairperson of history and sociology at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, he was asked by Coretta Scott King to help her develop the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Center in Atlanta. He also helped to organize and became the first director of the Institute of the Black World, also in Atlanta. His essays, articles, and poetry have been published in books, journals, and newspapers. And some of the names, again, that you will recognize is one of them, There Is a River, and another one, Martin Luther King, The Inconvenient Hero. He's the founder and co-chair of the Veterans Hope Project, an interdisciplinary initiative on religion, culture, and democracy. Tonight, he's going to be talking about us, about Martin Luther King Jr. and the future of America. Dr. Harding, we're delighted that you're here with us this evening, and please come up front and share some of your wisdom with us.
Come any place by myself. I think that in order to build democracy in our country, we must walk with each other and have as few stars as possible. So I have friends to accompany me. And one of them is right here. Where is Matthew? Wait, come Matthew, we walk together.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Good evening and welcome. It's such a privilege to be here at the desk at the table tonight with Vincent Harding, who you've heard about and who we're just so happy to welcome to the University of Louisville. To be here tonight with all of you, that many familiar faces, students, other faculty, community, peace and justice people, friends and colleagues. I'm Kate Fossil. I'm a professor here at the University of Louisville, and I'm proud to introduce to you my co-facilitator tonight is Matthew Simmons, who's to my far left here, who is a first year. He's new to Louisville. Let's give him a welcome to Louisville. Is a first-year graduate student in the master's program in Pan-African Studies. He's just recently gotten his bachelor's degree from Savannah State University and joins us from South Georgia. Just this semester is his first here at U of L. And so Matthew and I are going to be bouncing some ideas around with Vincent. This as you might have gathered from what Vincent said, Vincent isn't a lecturer. He's a teacher, and we learned that last night in my class, Matthew and I did. But he's not a lecturer, and so this is not going to be a lecture. It's going to be a conversation. To have the most effective conversation, can I also just have like a minute's business and ask everybody to silence their cell phones if they're not already? That way you can be fully here with us. So in a way, this conversation continues a dialogue that the three of us have been having last night and then earlier today. And so I think that one of the things that I'm hoping Vincent will start us off with is that he has had 2 days now, 2 pretty full days, to really observe and interact with our community here at the University of Louisville. So I think as we embark on building this new peace, justice, and conflict transformation program, that we'll benefit from that kind of outside participant observer. And so in terms of how to get us started, I guess that, you know, we want to hear a little bit about those observations of your observations on our campus over the last couple days. One of the things you've talked about is the interactions of students from Pan-African Studies, Women's and Gender Studies, history, a variety of disciplines and levels of students, the kind of strategic placement of our two institutes upstairs here in the library, and how those elements connect to Dr. Martin Luther King's final days and his important final call that forms the theme of this dialogue and this conference. Where do we go from here? So please join me in welcoming Dr. Vincent Harvey.
As you can see, friends, we're trying to learn how not to lecture. And so we figure our way through, and that's exactly what we need to do, because essentially we are trying to learn what it means to have a democratic society. We talk as if we already know, but we don't know. And so we're just making our way. And we make the way as we walk, as someone said in a wonderful book title. I am really very glad to be here with Matthew and with Kate for all kinds of different reasons. And if I had all night, I would tell you about them, but I don't. But I want to pick up Kate's request that grows out of my time here on campus. What have I been seeing that could help us understand the possibilities of a program in peace, justice, and conflict transformation? I want to start in terms of my observations by saying I am so glad that my beloved co-worker and soulmate, Aljosi Knight, would you raise your hand so that folks can at least see your hand? Okay. And I came to this campus a couple of days ago to scout you out. And one of the most important things that I feel that I have seen, I didn't actually see until tonight when I got here. And that's Tyler. It seems to me that what we have, hi Tyler, what we have here is an example of what is necessary if peace and justice and conflict transformation is going to be more than just titles in books. What we see here is a little boy brought by beloved, caring sisters to participate already in the building of a new society when he is what, 3 years old? 4, all right, senior builder. But that model of having a child already singing about we who believe in freedom cannot rest. I don't know if he knows how much not rest he's going to have starting from 4 years old, but that is wonderful that he's starting. And for me, that's one of the great models that I am breathing very deeply on and giving great thanks for. Of course, I have seen also other similar kind of models in the possibilities that I see here. Matthew represents one of those kinds of possibilities. in so many places that I know of, Pan-African studies has absolutely nothing to do with peace studies. People say Pan-African studies, that's us. Peace studies, that's for the white folks. And we know, if we are serious, that that is absolutely crazy and must not be encouraged. And what instead must be encouraged is all the Matthews that we know and all the wonderful Pan-African Studies students that I've met on the way, helping to come together with the Peace Studies folks and to recognize that in a deep sense, Martin King was the representative of the combining of those two, and that those two belong together. That's what I've seen, and Russ, I am absolutely certain that the program will be at its best when those are constantly combined. When Ann Braden and Muhammad Ali cannot just be in joint offices, but will have their spirits will actually be represented in this program. So, Kate, that's part of what I'm thinking. Let me just say a little bit more about what I see. I am so happy that I have seen a campus where people want to take what we call service learning seriously, where we want to take education out into the life of community and take the life of the community into the meaning of education itself. This is a wonderful place, therefore, to try to understand what indeed is peace and what indeed is justice. Those things cannot be discovered just on campuses. One must move from the campuses to understand what those are. And what I see is a space where campus and community are moving into and out of each other. And I see it right here tonight. And I'm very, very glad for it, very impressed by it. So Kate, this is another of my observations that you've asked for. Probably didn't know that you were asking for so much, but I couldn't help it. There's just so much that I see here. I see campus, community merging together, and Russ, whenever you have anything related to peace and justice and conflict transformation, you've got to have singing. Singing is absolutely crucial. All around the world, people have understood that lecturing is not what brings it. Lecturing is fine, but both before and after and during, people have got to sing and understand their connection to each other. No peace, no justice, no conflict transformation without singing. Okay, so some of you have got to promise to help Russell understand these things. That's what the democracy is. Russ thinks he's developing something for you all. And you come and say, thank you, and now this should be here too, and that doesn't work easily. But democracy doesn't work easily. Democracy is hard to work, hard to figure out how to put these strange and various parts together. That's what I see, Kate, that you've got tremendous possibilities here. You've also probably got tremendous challenges here. And I love it. I love it. I think that human beings become better and better the more challenges we have, not the less. To run away from challenges is to run away from humanity, to run away from our best possibility. We've got to look at the challenges and take them on. I see some young men here who probably are on some of the sports teams of this university. And I know that you guys can certainly testify to the fact that you don't become great athletes by running away from the hardest challenges, by refusing to meet the folks who are most difficult. You run towards that. That's what makes you a great team, a great athlete, and that's what makes us, when we do it, a great program, and that's what makes us a great country when we do it. So that's what I see. I see the possibility of all of this. Now, Kate, before I get the word from you folks, I want to just reflect out loud about how all of this may be related to my friend and brother, Martin Luther King Jr., and why I think he is deeply connected to the possibilities of a University of Louisville and a program of peace, justice, and conflict transformation. I had the great privilege and pleasure of knowing Martin for the last 10 years of his life. And that was very important knowing. We were friends and brothers and co-workers. And speaking of teams, by the way, there used to be retreats sometimes where folks would get off and get away to relax from the stuff of the struggle. And these two guys, Harding and King. Harding was 5'9". King was 5'7". And we both thought we could play basketball. And so we had some of the great retreats of us playing basketball. Now, Andy Young, who was just 5'9", 10 himself, was really an athlete. And Martin and me tried to guard him and didn't have much success at that. But that's all parenthesis. I just want to tell you that I am coming to you out of a deep sense of loving memory of my brother. And I feel that I cannot and should not talk about him without placing him in the context that he always placed himself in. One context, one part of that context was a deep religious faith. And for Martin, and that connection to here, is that as a result of that faith, and Martin, when he was 4 years old, was right there at Ebenezer Baptist Church every Sunday and Wednesday and any other days that the door was open. But he was not just a church goer. He was someone who tried to take seriously the essence of what was being taught. And one of the things that he clearly saw being taught in his religious experience is that we are all children of God. And that's not just a kind of easy phrase, but Martin, crazy man that he was, took that seriously. So you see, when the country said to him, we got to go and beat up on those folks over there, Martin said, those are my sisters and brothers in Vietnam. Now that's crazy, you see. If you really take this religious stuff seriously, you can get in trouble. And maybe that's why so many of us don't take it seriously. But Martin was determined to take it seriously. And he said, I cannot go and blow up and burn up my sisters and brothers just because you tell me they are my enemies. My faith tells me they are my family. What do you do with that? That's what real peace studies begins to try to struggle with. What do you do with that? Martin, of course, was also, at the same moment, deeply grabbed by this other crazy man called Jesus, who taught that you're supposed to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Martin took that seriously. And he remembered that when people were trying to trick him to say, oh yeah, well, who is my neighbor? And Martin remembered that Jesus loved to tell stories, and the way he answered that question was to tell the story of the Good Samaritan, and the outcome was, who is your neighbor? Anybody who is in trouble near you. How about some peace studies starting there? And some conflict transformation starting there? That was Martin. He believed this kind of business. He took it seriously. And what you could always see with Martin was that when Jesus was constantly standing on the side of the poor, not the middle class, but the poor. That's where Jesus was constantly identifying himself. Martin figured, maybe that's where I'm supposed to be too. And so my young student here, friend and brother, has been exploring, maybe he will say something about this in a little while. He's been exploring where Martin was going towards the end of his life. And clearly where he was going was getting closer and closer to the poor. We're going to get time for that in just a little while, brother. Keep your hands so that we can see them, and we'll be sure to call on you, okay?
That's what I'm doing, keep your so you can see.
We've got them in our image now, so you're going to be very, very close to first, if not first of all, okay? Hold on now. That's what we're here for, to make sure that some of you who have questions, thoughts, ideas about this new peace, justice, and transformation and conflict transformation program will be able to say, now this is what I think, I'd like to ask about this, this is where I am. I'm almost finished with my non-lecture. And so you'll be able to get in just a moment. Martin, at the end, was organizing poor people in a poor people's campaign. Black poor people, white poor people, Latino poor people, in a poor people's campaign. What does that have to do with peace and justice and conflict transformation? That's what we're assigning Russ and his co-workers to help us wrestle with and figure out. Here is one of the last things I would like to say about Martin. and what he has to do with us and with this kind of program. Martin, great-great-grandchild of enslaved people, people who were enslaved by the powers of this country, by the ordinary people of this country, by everybody in this country in those days of slavery. Martin loved this country. Now how and why is another whole thing that we won't try to get into, but it is the fact. He loved the country deeply. And he understood, as we should understand, that love does not mean going along with everything you do, going down on the way to hell. That love means being willing to say, wait, what's going on here? Could we look at this more closely? Martin was coming out of that love when he said, for instance, listening to the Marine song from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles on the land and on the sea. Martin, the lover of the country, would say, what you do in the halls of Montezuma? You get battles in Tripoli, which, by the way, is Libya of today. Martin asked those kinds of questions out of his love for his country and his determination to use his gifts of his mind for the good of his country, and not just to go along with whatever a leader, a president, whatever his color might be, would propose to be what we should do. All of that, for me, is the way the king might help us. He ended his life, remember, standing with garbage workers. That's what his PhD led to, by the way, to PhD seekers. That's one of the reasons for a PhD. Ready? Standing with garbage workers. And he said to us at the very end, America, you must be born again. You must find a way to deal with 3 deadly evils in our society. Because if we don't deal with them, they will destroy us and lots of other people as well. 1, the evil of racism. 2, the evil of materialism. Wanting everything we can get our hands on and determining our goodness by how much we can get our hands on. And 3, the evil of militarism. Believing that all human problems can be solved by armed force. King said, deal with those or die. peace studies. What are you thinking about King and all of this now?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Matthew.
Speak up, speak up.
On the topic that Dr. Harding was just speaking about, as far as Dr. King and his ability to love this country in spite of what it has done, like, I myself wrestle with this day in and day out, especially in the program that I'm in, Pan-African Studies, and all the things that you learn. It's like there's somewhat a bit of an anger that grows and grows much more every day when you learn that those who, your ancestors, were dehumanized, but still, yeah, I'm supposed to love this country. And on the topic of what it means for America to be born again, it's a very difficult topic when you take into account the dehumanization of those who you descend from. And for me,
Let me come and make this even more of a conversation, Michael, Matthew, because I want you now to speak to me about this question. If our ancestors were dehumanized, would you be here now trying to make a more human society? Somebody kept their humanity so they could pass it on to you. Or do you see it that somehow they got dehumanized and couldn't be humans? That's a tricky term. We use it very often, but it's a dangerous term. I personally don't believe that our ancestors were dehumanized. People tried to dehumanize them, but they did not succeed, and you and Tyler are the evidence of that. But go on.
I mean, I have to take into account, of course, what you just said. It's just a lot of the things like we were talking about in the class. It was a class before U.S. social justice movements, which was yesterday, and we had a conversation very much like this when everybody was involved, and the issues of the civil rights movement, what they were fighting for. At times, it can be a bit confusing. And like I said, all of these classes come together. You talk about integration, assimilation, and things like this. And at one point, it seemed to me as if integration was a masked assimilation. Like, I have to negate my whole entirety of who I am in order to survive in this society. And the critical issue of life and death, I feel, should not rest upon the shoulders of a racial group's ability or inability to recognize the humanity in someone, even though, just as you said, it was an attempt to dehumanize them. So I wrestle with this day in and day out as I learn more and more.
Yes. Keep wrestling, please.
That's all I would say about that.
Matthew is modeling for us what I hope a peace, justice, and conflict transformation program is going to represent. No easy answers. but absolutely necessary struggle on these questions. What must white people and black people do in order to transform the conflict that has been in our life for almost 400 years? You don't just announce your way out of that. You don't deny your way out of that. You struggle your way. You saw Matthew up here just working on it. What a wonderful model. This is what true education is. Struggling with the truth as it comes to you. Lord, I've got to start thinking again about this. What shall I do now? What shall I do? And what we do is, whatever we do it together. We do it young and old together. We do it black and white together to struggle. We do it male and female together to struggle these things through. That's what we need, Russ. Every excuse for being together that we can get, including good meals.
How am I supposed to follow that?
No, you don't supposed to follow, you're supposed to go along.
I'm supposed to lead too. Okay.
Right.
Well, actually, my question did have to do with leadership, or it's just something I'd like for us to struggle with as a group for a few minutes, because as you know, Vincent, and as Matthew knows, I know Vincent Harding. I had the privilege of becoming his friend some years ago through the intervention of Ann Braden, who introduced me to Vincent, who was a very dear friend of hers. And I'm thinking some about what she said about leadership, which had to do with Dr. King in a way. It's like she was sort of quote Diane Nash from Eyes on the Prize, the series, when it was like, oh, if we had a leader like Dr. King, what could we do? We could do it all if we had a leader like Dr. King. But the other model of leadership is much more messy, actually, as you're pointing out, that is democracy. So I'd like to, without putting aside Dr. King, because I think that model that you have laid out for us is a very powerful one, but to sort of think about one of the questions Matthew asked earlier today when we were talking about it was this, like, what do we do then? What must we do? And so I'd like to hear a little bit from both of you, perhaps, about this question of leadership.
Whenever I think of that matter of leadership, several things come to my mind. And brother, we haven't forgotten you, so don't give up on us, okay?
I've almost forgot the...
All right, don't forget it, because we're coming back to you. Okay. Several things come to my mind. One is that, as you mentioned, Kate, if we take seriously a democracy, if we believe that we are called upon, we the people, have as our major responsibility under the Constitution, not to compete with China, not to make the best drones in the world, but that we the people have as our major responsibility not to just vote for a president to lead us, but we the people of the United States have as our role the task of creating a more perfect union than the one that we have now. That's our job. I think of that when you speak about leadership. And so the question then becomes, and what am I supposed to be doing about that? What am I supposed to be doing as a college sophomore, or as a second-year graduate student, or as a citizen of the town? What am I supposed to be doing about that? And I think secondly about dear Sister June Jordan and that magnificent poem of hers that Sweet Honey turned into a song. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Okay? That's what democracy says. You, we need you. You are the ones. Us are the ones. Tyler is the one. Matthew is the one. Kate is the one. Vincent is the one. We are the ones, especially when we get together. Those are the things that I think about. And when I hear Matthew coming to me, both physically and I catch his spirit, he's constantly asking, and what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? My answer to that, Kate, is we should keep asking that question. Do not give up on asking that question, because we will never find out what we should do if we stop asking the question, if we stop assuming that there is something that can be done. But if we assume that there is something that can be done, that can help us create not the most perfect union in all the world, but a more perfect union than the one we have now. If that is the way we go at it, then we might find that we indeed are the ones who can do it. So Kate, I keep wanting to put that question of leadership into the context of our we-ness. And that's why I love it when we can come together. Whenever we can come together, we can be we. Not waiting for the word from the master, but waiting for what comes up from us, comes out of us. And I love to wait and see what comes. That's why I want the brother to come with his question, because I always find that there are as many answers and questions as there are answers and answers. Okay? Giving up easily now? Everything you wouldn't say, but I can't say it the way you would say it. The Matthew way is your way. For a leader, Matthew.
On the topic of leadership, one thing that me and a couple of my friends always talk about is that many people are always looking for one person to come out of the crowd and lead us to salvation, which is not going to happen. Like, as he said earlier, I was asking him the question, or basically telling him that I always come to the same question. It's just like, I know there's a problem, but I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. And I just have to come to the conclusion that there is not going to be one perfect time for me to just feel like, okay, now I'm ready. I just have to go.
Thank you, Madeline. And thank you for being patient with me.
You know, Vincent reminded us earlier in the day when we were planning this conversation that, you know, one of the great, sort of elements coming out of the African American experience in the United States is jazz. And jazz, of course, involves a lot of improvisation. So that's kind of what we're doing here, but I'm not always sure where to go next with it.
We should go next out there.
Okay.
Those folks out there just been looking at us and nodding or clapping or crying. Now we need to get you all into the conversation wherever you want to come in.
Well, one thing we said, I believe we should take Mr. C's question or comment first. We did say, however, that the first few questions or comments that Vincent was going to take, that we would take, would come from people under 30.
Yes, we should stick with that. Brother C, would you be willing for us to wait on you until you get under 30? Or until you hear some more under 30 folks, then we'll hear you, who I'm sure are just slightly over 30, right?
Well, I'm 71.
Oh, wow. And I'm 81, so we should make a good combination.
Yeah, I was with Resurrection City out here in Washington.
Right.
Any young from the here. The second watch of Washington.
Thank you for being there. Thank you for being there.
Jose Williams, a bunch of Jesse Jackson and all of them.
Okay. You got some history that the director of the program on peace, justice, and conflict mediate transformation is being encouraged now to look around the local community for people who have experience in peace, justice, and conflict transformation work, and to bring them into contact with the students who are studying that. We are now encouraging the director to hear that great idea that maybe Brother C has something important that he should be able to teach to the students out of his own experience. So I don't know where Russell is hiding now, but Russell, we are beginning to get from the community ideas about what it means to develop a peace, justice, and conflict transformation program. For those of you who are under 30, we would like you to start with your questions, your ideas, your disagreements, your speeches, your songs, because this is your century. And we need you to lead us off here. Did you see somebody under 30? Oh, I'm sorry, not under, yes, it is under 30. Around 30.
May I speak?
Sure.
I would like to speak to
You
your...
must speak.
Thank you. I would like to speak to your notion of democracy.
Before you do that, could I offer a suggestion about a process? You all have been introduced to us. We haven't been introduced to you. Give us at least your full name and where you spent your childhood before you say anything else, okay?
My name is Zachary Leamy. I'm a sociology and economics student here at the University of Louisville. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, in the Smoketown area.
Thank you. Zach? Zach, okay. Good. Now look at that. People got to shake hands who would have just been listening without him identifying himself. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to speak to this model of democracy that has existed in this country for several hundred years. And hope to shed some light on the issue in my naivety. When that document you're talking about, the Constitution, was written, it was written for people that look like me. It was directed for white
If you
men.
had money.
Yes, yeah, and property. And at the time, it may have been a good model, but this is 2012. Representative democracy was a great idea, but it's not necessary anymore. we have the technology today to engage in more direct democracy, in consensus democracy. I advocate what's called a quantified consensus. And I don't think that we truly have a democracy. I don't think you can have a democracy in a capitalist state where the government is controlled and dictated by corporations, by white men, by the powers that be. And in order for there to be real progress, we need to move away from this model.
Zachary, thank you very much for entering that kind of idea into the conversation. The building of a democracy absolutely requires strange, to some of us, ideas to get in there so that we can open up the nature of the conversation. And thanks for opening that up. There's so much that could be said about that, but let's hear some more from folks, starting again with those who are under 30.
What are your suggestions to engage clergy in the task of peace and justice? I believe a lot of churches, houses of worship, are not doing their fresh up work to aid in peace and justice as Jesus did in his time, and understanding the politics of Jesus and applying them to the current world order and the current world view.
You forgot the process. Name,
I'm sorry.
please, Mr. Charles.
Sydney, Lovelace, Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay,
Sorry.
Brother Sydney. You sort of answered your own question, as so often is the case. Sometimes we need to just get the question out, and we're getting it out. It comes pretty clear to us what the answer is. Sydney was asking, what is the role of the church, of the clergy, in this whole matter of building a more perfect union, in dealing with the needs of our society, in meeting especially the needs of the poor and the left out? And obviously, the church, as one part of American religion, has this great responsibility of taking itself seriously and taking Jesus seriously. But the church has so often seen what happened to people like Martin King and our sister, whose very name runs away from me now. Our sister, Anne Braden. If you're going to be serious about being the church, you can't be just a building. You've got to be a force. And that force has to stand next to those who are most in trouble. Not to those who have the most money, but to those who are most in trouble. That's what that force was called into being for. So when we don't do that, we are obviously missing our purpose. And we can go on existing, but without purpose. And then you can see the results of what happens when things exist and have no purpose. They get into real trouble in all kinds of ways that we don't have time to go into right now. Another younger hand.
Hi, my name is Allison Jenkins. I'm a biological anthropology major, and I moved 11 times in my childhood. Arizona, Alabama, Kentucky, England, Colorado. And there's multiple places within each state and country. And my question, I'm not exactly sure how to frame, but I'm interested in going into the Peace Corps because of that. And with the kind of personality type of wanting to care about other people, you often forget about yourself. And so from peace and conflict resolution worker or from maybe Dr. King's perspective as well, maybe we drew from this day, but how do you balance having peace within yourself and peace within, trying to create peace within the community? Like, how do you find that balance, if that makes sense? And knowing how far to go, or maybe feeling how far to go, and how far you are possible or capable of going without destroying yourself in the process.
Allison, thank you so much for raising that question, because it's not just a Peace Corps kind of question. It's a question for all peacemakers. But we do have an opportunity not to have to depend just upon Dr. King's model. We have right there with us someone who was one of the early Peace Corps members. And I'm going to ask her if she would take on that, at least a little of that question of how do you move on this matter of the relationship between making peace out there and making peace in here. Al-Josie, would you take it on? Al-Josie was one of the earliest of the Peace Corps workers who went from Salisbury, North Carolina, out to Togo, West Africa.
So now you know my name and where I'm from. One of the things that I learned, I'll just start with this. When I went to Togo, I was a type A with migraines and that kind of thing. Within 6 months, I didn't have any more migraines, and I haven't had any since. I think what you have to do is just learn to do what you can do, to be with the people that you're with, to serve in any way that comes to you, and not to worry about what the answer is going to be down the road, what the solution is going to be down the road. I think we're called on to do what we can do in the moment, believing that all that we do has a higher purpose than us. And we may not see the solution, but if we give up worrying about the process, we just stay in the moment and learn. What was so good about Togo was that I learned to stand in a line at the bank without worrying about getting to the cashier in about 3 or 4 minutes. People said, oh, you can come up front, you can come up front. And I found out that they were not as concerned about how quickly they got through, but they were more concerned about their own humanity and mind. And I learned to just be in the moment and learn from people who supposedly I had been sent there to teach, but who were the greatest teachers for me. And so I say that to you. Do what you can do. Don't worry about the process. Don't worry about how it's going to turn out. Just stay in the moment. Do all that you can do, and that is all that you're called to do.
Oh, thank you so much. Here is someone right down front who seems to qualify.
I seem to qualify. My name is Miriam Williams. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. And my question is, how do you explain some people's deep religious convictions, not just to not do things that Jesus did, but to do the opposite, and to be like actively against the poor and actively for war and seemingly and actively against justice?
Did you all hear mostly that question? And your first name again?
Mariam.
Mariam. How do we explain that? People who seem to have religious drive not to be human, which is counter to what religion is supposed to be about. As I understand it, it's supposed to be teaching us how to be human, so that we could understand what it means to be divine. Miriam, I am not kidding now in the first piece of my answer. I think a lot of these folks never had, he's gone now, a Tyler experience. A lot of these folks never had the opportunity to have folks really hug them and care about them, to let them sing however they wanted to sing, to move knowing that they were cared about, to be in the company of all kinds of other people, that a lot of these folks were never exposed to that kind of humanizing as opposed to dehumanizing, to that kind of humanizing experience. And so they didn't know where to go or how to go. The other thing, of course, is that a lot of folks have been taught by folks who themselves are not serious about what Jesus was saying when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. For me, the key, one of the keys to that is that really means that I've got to love myself. And a lot of folks in religious settings and non-religious settings don't love themselves. And that shows up in how they treat other people. And the lack of love that they have for themselves comes out in the way that they deal with others. Jesus was no fool. He knew that if you didn't love yourself, you don't go around talking about loving other people. That lack of love will come out. So that was one of the reasons why I was so at peace with the Black consciousness movement. That I saw a movement that was saying, among other things that was saying, Black folks, learn to love yourselves in order that you can make the best contribution to the world. And it was saying to white folks, stop worrying about Black folks loving themselves. That is absolutely necessary for everybody's integrity. And was saying to white folks, really love yourself and see where that leads you. That's the way I would get it there. Thank you.
Any more under 30?
Go.
All the way in the back.
My name is Gary Bryce. I'm originally from
Louder, please, if you can.
Louder?
Yes, and by the way, in the construction of all of our rooms where peace, justice, and conflict mediation takes place, we must have lots of hand mics so that the community can really hear each other, okay?
Okay. I have a comment, and then I would like to share a poem. The comment that I have, I think for African American people, I think it's important for us to stop calling ourselves Black. Because Black is the absence of light, which is the direct opposite of what this skin does. And so I think Black is toxic, and it subconsciously, for the certain segments of the community, they've internalized the darker side of the meaning, and I think we should have a way with it. And then the poem that I have is a piece that came to me. Are there any children in here?
There were, but he went home to go to sleep.
Okay, good.
R rating is fine.
Okay, good. I have a poem that I wrote. It's called Close My Eyes. The eyes are the front door to the mind, back door to the soul. The things they take in can eventually take control, creating a whole.
A black hole at my core, constantly taking in more reality TV, toxic to me. Rap songs, glass bones, more clothes, get hoes, drink this, think that, worldly riffraff, plugging my train of thought, making my brain a coffin. Fueling my desires, feeding my sins, making me believe that by giving in to the pollution of this world that somehow it will make me a better person. Oh, it feels good when I do it, but my attitude, my energy, my spirit feels worse, and like I'm walking in death, like I'm living in hell in this hospital bed of a life, and I'm just ringing my bell, ringing for help, searching for answers. But my mind just goes back to those sexy ass dancers. I can't control my mind. My thoughts are taking over. Oh, come on, don't look at me like I'm the only one that felt like it was over. Facebook, Noon, politics, holichick, get on your knees and... I just say that. Where the heck is my conscience at? Condom on, lubed up, we about to do it up. 27 minutes of pleasure, and ooh, it feels so good. Until our eyes meet and the energy from your spirit enters my body like the bullet out of a gun. Bang, piercing my brain, making me insane in this culture where all we really worship is celebrity and fame. I'm in you, it feels good. Oh, this is what they call knocking wood, knock on wood, because I wish I could cleanse my mind, free my soul, fill this hole, close my eyes, shut the door, because I don't want the crap of this world to control me anymore. I want to meet God. I want to see Jesus. I want to tap into, utilize, and cover the divine power that frees us. Jesus. Save my life. Forgive my sin. In this race we call life, all I want to do is win. Elevate my consciousness to operate with love, to be at one in this world instead of afraid of this world. Because see, the eyes are the front door to the mind, back door to the soul. The things they take in can eventually take control. I close my eyes, I free my mind. Sometimes I wish I had been born blind, but I wasn't. I see what controls me. I see what controls us. TV, radio, internet, are you winning yet? Cell phones, fast food, anything that controls our mood we see. But we can still be free if we walk by faith and not by sight. If we live by day and not by night. If we be of love and not of fight. If we close our eyes and do what's right. Bury ourselves in righteousness. Dig like a mole. But be careful what you take in. Because the eyes, front door to the mind, back door to the soul.
We're getting the message here that we have to wrap up because we want to have time. Vincent has agreed, I think, to sign some books outside. I guess the one thing, thinking about jazz improvisation, I can't help but riff off of that to bring it back to what Vincent said earlier about Dr. King's 3 themes, which we've talked a lot about racism and war and militarism. We haven't talked so much. In a peace and justice program, we haven't talked so much about materialism. So I really appreciate that. And I guess I'd love to ask you, Vincent, if you would, my brother, if you would finish this dialogue by reminding us about what one of the people that keeps you going, the message you told us about in class last night about hearing on the radio. Would that please you? That
will please me, but I want to make sure, Matthew, did you want to respond to the poem or to anything as a part of your closing of the situation here? You need at least to say good night and thank you to both.
Thank you everybody for coming, and it was a great one.
Brother Poet, thank you very, very much for blessing us. And I take it that the director of the program realizes that there can be no peace or justice or conflict mediation without poetry. Kate is asking me to share something that has been a part of my life for a long, long time. In the days when people used to listen to the radio a lot, if any of you remember the radio, I still listen to the radio a lot. But in those days, for me it was back in the late 40s, early 50s, I believe. I heard a poet being interviewed on the radio before NPR. I don't remember at all what even the station the program was, but he was a poet from West Africa, and he had been deeply involved in the anti-colonial struggles there, seeking to build new possibilities and new ways of life. And he made this statement, which I have taken in for myself and offer as a possibility for you as you think about yourselves. He said, I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist. And of course, what he was saying without saying it is that as a citizen, I am committed to making that country exist. For me, that is the America that does not yet exist. And I want to encourage you all to think about not the country that does exist, the country that exists badly, was created even worse, but the country that might exist in our work and in our dream. And my sense is that any program that calls itself peace, justice, and conflict mediation would have that as one of its secret agendas. Picking up Langston's poem, America, you've never been America to me, but I swear this oath, you will be. Good night.